Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome.
And thank you for coming, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
You follow a long line of traditional commissioners that come from the 4th District, and we welcome you. That's it. Lloyd Ayres, Harrison, fine tradition of finding a good quality place to live in the 4th. I want to also thank you for your department's commitment to the Randolph Career Technical High School. They have a EMS and fire academy there for high schoolers that is the type of career, school-to-career program, and your officers there spend a lot of time mentoring those young people, and the fruits of that is that they go on to live productive lives, some of them even taking the test to be firemen. So thank you for that commitment and want to see it continue. I know it's a rough day for you. Anytime we memorialize the loss of life of a comrade or officer and then have to talk about it in a retrospective kind of view on what happened and what we could do better, I would ask you, Commissioner, what are your takeaways? I heard your 26 points. I understand that. In light of that loss of life, in light of the equipment issues, how do we make sure that that never happens again?
Councilman, I appreciate the question. We, you know, this budget really gets us moving on that track with the dedicated training officers, the new dedicated training officers, additional firefighters to help us raise our relief factor so we can do training in a sustainable way without compromising our frontline service. Of course, starting to address some of the EMS, or continuing to address some of the EMS challenges. There's a lot to do. I mean, those 26 recommendations between the NIOSH report and our fire department's report, that, you know, this is going to be a long-term project. Training is a hallmark of that. So there really is a lot to do. I think for us, the most important thing to start with is to do the best we can with the resources we have and the resources in this budget, to the new resources in this budget, to take care of what we have, and that's the people we have. You know, our primary asset is our people, and then add service delivery units down the road.
So my former colleague, now Mayor Kenny, was and is a proponent of this department. He talked about the brownouts. Did we take that off the table now? We don't have those.
On Mayor Kenny, I think it might have even been before day one, but I wasn't here. The brownouts stopped. The forced rotation of firefighters was stopped, and now we're using a different, again, collaboratively developed way to provide for some movement in the system across the different deployments and different firehouses. So those have stopped. Now really where we are, and you'll see that in this budget proposal, really focusing on training, having the capacity to do training, the resources to do training, and also safety. We've put in some dedicated safety officer positions. We've put in some dedicated positions in our communications center. And that actually happened, you know, thank you, I guess, retrospect, that's actually happened at mid-year. So we are well on our way, but it's a long-term project.
So specifically, the response time it took for the officer who repeatedly requested help, and the time it took for the backup units, is that a part of adding staff? Is that a function of knowing quicker routes? What specifically are we doing to address that issue?
It's a great question, and I think the answer is all of the above. Firefighting, while it may look simple, it's very complicated, happens in a complex operating environment, and I use that term deliberately because you don't always know all of the variables and you can't specify those. So what you saw in these reports in this incident is not uncommon when you look at reports like this from across the country. There were a series of contributing factors. Any one of those in isolation, we would not have had the tragic outcome. All of those factors together combined, and it does ultimately go back through everything you mentioned. Where are our resources? How long is it going to take them to get to certain points? With what training? How long does it take to assemble an effective firefighting force? How do we properly command and utilize that force and manage that incident, which is a very difficult thing to do in any place at 2 o'clock in the morning on a rainy, cold night.
So finally, I've been up to the Fire Academy a number of times. The grand fourth floor up there is hard to get to. If you had your druthers, if you had President Clark's magic budget checkbook, what kind of facility would you like to see up there?
Council President, you didn't show me that magic checkbook when we talked that day, but
It's for members only.
Councilman, it's a great question. I think realistically, and what you'll see in the plan, in this budget, in this 5-year capital plan, 6-year capital plan, there is money in there to start the design and start site work on essentially rebuilding on that site to do a lot of what we need to do, what I'll call the hard skills training. So having our burn tower, there aren't many places in the city where we can actually make the kind of noise and do the kind of things that we need to do to create a realistic training environment. So I think despite how far it is, the Pennypack Street location is probably good for that. We had a needs assessment that Public Property did in concert with the fire department. You see that in the 6-year capital plan. I think that's our best option for that component. We are also looking at other options for really creating a training system so it's not just at that location. We can do it anywhere, anytime, 24/7.
To your knowledge, is there a better training facility somewhere that we could model it after, or are you going to design build from scratch?
We actually, frankly, the folks that did the needs assessment did a really nice job and did look at some adjacent training facilities here, so we didn't have to go far to find some good examples, and I think we'll certainly want to learn lessons from all those folks.
Thank you, Mr. President.